Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hello everyone, and welcome to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I am your host, Joanna. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Work in Progress, our personal productivity podcast. I'm your host, Joanna, and today we're going to be chatting about the relationship between sleep and performance, specifically how we can unlock the power of sleep for peak performance and just improving our overall productivity. So joining me today is Seth Davis. Seth is a certified sleep coach, corporate sleep wellness expert, and speaker, helping people improve their lives through sleep. Hi, Seth. How are you today?
Hi, Joanna. I'm great. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for joining us.
Sure. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get started, would you like to introduce yourself a bit more with who you are and what it is you do?
Sure. Yeah. So as you said, I'm an adult sleep coach. I live in Denver, Colorado in the United States. I work with a team of people. So we work on adult sleep. We also have some pediatric sleep experts. So we kind of try to work with people of all ages to help them just improve their sleep, which overall improves their lives. So that's kind of my mission, is to help as many people sleep as possible.
And how did you find yourself in this line of work?
So it started as with a lot of other people, where I had my own sleep issues. So I was dealing with kind of insomnia due to my job stress and things like that. And so, I found myself in this place where I had my own sleep issues, wanted to learn how to fix things naturally so that I could get my peak performance working for me. So I became a sleep coach just to sort of learn, to gain the knowledge of what I was doing wrong, what I could improve, to fix myself, and then to help other people. So it came out of a personal need, and I built it into a business.
That sounds really interesting. And what would you say is your favorite part about your job?
I would say my favorite part is, first of all, is helping people who were in the same position that I was in. So I kind of know how much they were struggling or how much they want to improve things. So helping them to get to a place where they're sleeping better and feeling better. And also just the individuality of sleep. So everybody has their own lifestyles and sleep challenges. So it's kind of like being a sleep detective and sort of working to figure out what are the things that are going wrong and how can we improve those so that things can go right for those people. So a lot of personalized care for each person.
Yeah, and do you find that every individual person's case is different to everyone else's, that everyone has their own unique sort of set of issues or things they're going through?
I think that sometimes they can group people into very similar situations. So I see a lot of similar cases, but overall, usually people have something in their lives that's different. So maybe they have children that's kind of causing their sleep issues, or their job, they work shift work, so they're kind of working overnight. And so those life circumstances kind of are different for each person, and each a little bit of a different problem to solve.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. Before we dive into the interview bit of today, we have a section we call Have You Met Seth? So we just get to know you with some little questions. So my first one for you here is, do you have a favorite book or anything that you're reading at the moment?
Sure. So a book that I just read recently was Atomic Habits. So it's kind of focused around helping people to get rid of bad habits, replace them with better habits, and kind of strategies to reinforce those habits. So I find that it's really interesting, and the knowledge is applicable to sleep in a lot of cases. So I actually use some of those teachings when I'm working with people as a sleep coach.
Yeah, is there an interesting point you can pull out of the book for us?
Yeah. So one of the things I like about it is something that he calls habit stacking. So it's kind of stacking habits on top of each other. And so, for example, if you are having trouble waking up in the morning, you might get your feet on the ground, and then have a nice cup of coffee waiting for you in the automatic coffee brewer, and then just have these habits kind of stacked so that it makes it easier for you to get out of bed in the morning.
Yeah, I definitely have heard of habit stacking. I haven't read Atomic Habits myself, but it sounds like a really interesting one.
It's useful for a lot of areas of your life.
Yeah, great. Well, next one here is movies. Is there anything that you've watched recently that's been a favorite?
So actually, a movie that I've rewatched that I've seen it a few times is one of the Batman movies, The Dark Knight. And so when I was a kid, I just loved comic books and superheroes and everything. So I like going back to those and watching these characters from my childhood kind of come alive in movies. So I watched The Dark Knight recently. So that's kind of just a fun pleasure movie to watch.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you more of a DC or a Marvel fan, would you say?
Marvel for sure.
Marvel? Yeah.
Yeah. Although
Fair
I feel
enough.
like the movies lately haven't been quite as good, but they're still enjoyable, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that there haven't been too many good ones. I recently watched what did I watch? The Marvels. I watched that.
I haven't seen that one
Um
yet.
oh, is it out in America?
It is, yeah. I haven't gotten to see it yet. Did you
Oh.
like it?
The reviews have not been the greatest for it, but I thought it was enjoyable. It was like an hour and a half, and I
Hmm.
thought, yeah, it was fine to watch.
Okay. I'll still have to go see that one.
Yeah, definitely not as good as like Endgame or any of those other ones, but
No.
yeah,
Yeah, the earlier
great.
ones are great.
Yeah, they definitely are. Well, my next one here for you is podcasts. We're on a podcast right now, but do you listen to podcasts yourself?
I do. Yeah, I usually listen to them in the morning or while I'm driving. Um, One of the ones that I've been listening to recently is one. It's called Sleep Unplugged. It's by Dr. Chris Winter, and he has a couple of books about sleep that are really good, and his podcast is great. And he just has a way of kind of explaining things in simpler terms to a lot of people. So he kind of breaks down these topics, simplifies them, makes them sort of fun. So I enjoy listening to him, and some of the things I learned from that, I'm able to apply in my coaching as well.
Yeah. And do you find that you get a lot of your inspiration by like reading or listening to podcasts related to sleep?
I do. Even so, podcasts related to sleep and some that are related to productivity or habits or things like that. So it's all kind of, I'm able to integrate it and learn those things and put it into play with my coaching as well. So I'm always drawing from different sources and seeing where I can pick up little tidbits that I can use.
Yeah, interesting. I love like doing that. I feel like it's the best way to get more information, especially podcasts. If you're not into just one specific podcast, you normally jump around different episodes, different podcasts, and I find like it's the best way to learn as well sometimes.
Do you have a favorite podcast from the Australian area, or I guess it doesn't really matter where it's from, but do you have a podcast you're listening to?
I haven't listened to a podcast in a very long time. I'm embarrassed to admit, but I would say my favorite is one called what's it called? Red Handed. It's not Australian. It's hosted by these two women from the UK, and it's a true crime podcast.
Okay.
Yeah,
I've not. I know that true crime has been very big over the last several years.
yeah, it definitely has. It's like one of my favorite genres. I feel like that's probably the only genre I can listen to for podcasts. I just find them very interesting. Um, but yeah, not much to learn there, but I guess it satisfies your curiosity.
Entertainment's important too.
Exactly, 100%. Great. Well, I've got one last question here for you, which is do you have a famous role model or anyone in your life that you find inspirational?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually just picked up this role model over the last year or so, but so my kids have become very much into soccer, and so they're big Leo Messi fans. So I started learning more about him, and we watched a lot of his games over the past year, and I learned how much of a he seems like he's a good teammate. Seems like he does a lot for the community. He's a family person and good role model for kids. So I've watched a lot of him, and he's become a person who I definitely enjoy watching, and just seeing how much he does for the sport of soccer or football and for kids and everything. So yeah, I would say Leo Messi's a big one.
Yeah, that's a good one. And how old are your kids?
They're 5 and 8.
Oh, that's so cute.
They're huge, huge wear soccer jerseys to school every single day.
Yeah. Did you say they played?
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So
Do
they
they
both
play
want.
on the same team?
No, they're because with the age difference, they play on different age teams, but they both want to be messy. So every time they play against each other in the backyard, they both want to be messy.
Oh, that's super cute. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I guess we can get into the nitty gritty of everything today. So, my first question for you is would you be able to define what peak performance means, like in the context of sleep and enhancing our sleep?
Sure. So yeah, and as a sleep coach, that's kind of one of the things that I work with people to do is see how can we unlock their peak performance for sleep. So some of the things we look at for that um, are making sure that the person's sleep quality is good. So we want to make sure that they're getting enough of the deep restorative sleep and the different stages of sleep that fulfills their needs during the night. Because when you get enough of those things, it kind of restores you during the night and helps prepare you for the next day. We make sure that the sleep duration is enough. So we want to make sure you're getting enough sleep. You're giving yourself enough opportunities to sleep and getting enough to fulfill your needs. Make sure that your sleep patterns are consistent so that, we don't have these big variations in your sleep from night to night. And consistency really helps you to, get deeper sleep, get higher quality sleep. And then environmental too. So just want to make sure that your sleep environment is comfortable for you, that it's kind of giving your body the biological signals that it's time to sleep and get quality sleep. So when we can, work on all those things and optimize all those things, then we tend to have peak performance in terms of sleep, and that benefits us the next day.
Yeah, and in terms of like these little factors, what would you say is the most optimal sort of sleeping conditions, or what would you recommend to clients?
Yeah. So first of all, I mean, just generally, we want to make sure that your environment is fixed up. So we want to make sure that you have, it's dark enough at night, that it's not too hot or too cold, that your bedding, your bed is comfortable for you, and that the when you walk into your bedroom, we just want it to feel like a sleep sanctuary. So it's a place where you look forward to going, you're comfortable when you sleep, and you can sleep well. Um, and we want so that's the kind of the environment, but we also want your body and your minds to be calm as well. So it doesn't matter if your environment is, very comfortable. If you get into bed and your mind is racing and you're stressed out and all these things, then you're probably going to have some restless, low quality sleep. So it's kind of working on the environment, your mind and body, and getting those things to be optimized for sleep.
Yeah, and what do you think the sort of connection is between sleep and sort of increasing or like maintaining our productivity?
Yeah. So sleep, I mean, basically, when it comes to productivity, sleep drives everything. So if you think of times where you haven't had a good night of sleep, you might be less motivated. So if there's a challenge in front of you or a project that's going to require some energy and effort, you might be less likely to want to tackle that. So you're just less motivated. You might have your mood might be sort of lower. So, if you have a stressful moment, you might, get angry more easily or frustrated or sad or anything like that. So your mood is a little bit harder to control. You could probably think of times where you haven't had a good night of sleep and then your energy is crashed the next day. So, it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't make it any further. So when we have things going on like that, then when we haven't slept well and we're just tired and moody and everything, then we're probably not going to be very productive. We just don't have that energy. We don't have the mood. We don't have the just the wind in our sails to keep us going. So yeah. So the more that we are, the more well rested we are, the more productive we are, and we can make it through the day better.
Yeah, and you mentioned like sometimes we might get to like 1:30 in the afternoon and we'll crash. And do you think that naps are a good idea or a concept that's like healthy in those situations?
Yeah, in general, they've shown that naps are very helpful. The only time that they're not helpful, perhaps, is if you're having trouble sleeping at night. And so, if you take a long nap during the day, it can potentially mess with your sleep during the night. But otherwise, they've shown that it can help to boost your energy after the nap, to help with focus later on in the afternoon. So they can be a tool that we can use to sort of just regroup, re-energize ourselves for the second half of the day.
Yeah, great. And do you think there's an optimal like nap time or like when people should be taking their naps?
Mhm. Yeah, so they've shown that kind of short power naps, so somewhere between 10 to 25 or 10 to 30 minutes is enough where you start to, you get into sleep, but you don't get into the deep stages of sleep. So when you wake up from this short nap, you're not groggy and trying to, gather your wits. So sort of a shorter nap, and usually before 2 or 3 in the afternoon. So if you just kind of keep it earlier, then that should be enough to give you that boost, but not affect your nighttime sleep. So shorter and earlier are sort of the better criteria for naps.
Yeah. And how do we go about identifying whether like our nap is something healthy or if our nap is just like a signal that we haven't gotten enough sleep or there's something wrong with like the time that we sleep like at night?
Well, yeah. So if you find that you just can't function without a nap, or you feel like you need it every day, and you're kind of using it to try to catch up on sleep, then that's a really good indicator that your nighttime sleep wasn't sufficient. So if you're using it as a way to sort of compensate for poor nighttime sleep, then that's a good indicator. But if it's something that you're using just as a little energy boost or focus boost in the afternoon, then that's the kind of the healthier way to do it.
Yeah, and I feel like there's been this sort of like, I don't know, thing around naps, and it's like a signal that you haven't gotten enough sleep. So if you take a nap, that means you don't have healthy sleep or something like that. So people tend to avoid taking naps or they think that taking naps are a bad thing now.
Yeah, I think there can be a stigma around it where some people think if you take a nap, you're lazy, or if you take a nap, like you said, it can be a sign of nighttime sleep. But if you look at some of the highest performing people, so I think there's a lot of CEOs and athletes and people like that, and they are sort of proactive nappers. So they want the benefits of the extra focus, of the energy boost. So they kind of have broken it down to it's just something that they do on a daily basis. It's something that they use as a performance enhancer. So I think when you view it like that, then it's not so much of a laziness thing, but it's more of I'm using this to enhance my performance.
Yeah, and would you be able to share some of like the tangible benefits individuals can experience when they have like a good sleep or like a healthy sleep?
Sure. Yeah. So there are many different studies that show all these different benefits of sleep. So I think that's something that, I could probably, there's probably 100 different benefits, but one thing I can think of is they've shown that we think more clearly when we have slept well. So our memory is better. We're able to, kind of retain information better. So we're able to learn better. We are able to have a higher emotional intelligence. So they've done studies showing that when we haven't slept well, we might misinterpret, a coworker's facial expressions or something. So they might have a normal facial expression, but we interpret them that they're angry at us or something like that. So the mental benefits of sleep are many. I mentioned, I think, mood earlier, and so when we haven't slept well, we're more prone to things like anxiety or depression, or we don't deal with stress as well. So when we are in a office setting or team setting or something, if we're anxious, if we're stressed, that's not going to help us perform, and it probably will kind of affect our team, our team and dynamic. So basically, there's a lot of mental benefits, there's a lot of performance benefits, and those are a few examples, I guess, that I can give.
Yeah. And speaking of like just maximizing our sleep, I guess, and like the quality of it, I know that there are certain things that you should kind of be doing like right before you go to bed or like good ways to set yourself up for a good night of sleep. Would you be able to share some of those with us?
hmm Yeah. So for example, right before bed is a great time to sort of unwind, let go of the day. And when we do that, we're able to just, be in a better mental state. So we're not as stressed, our mind is calmer, and we're able to sort of relax into sleep. So what that evening time looks like for a lot of people, it can be different. It goes back to the individuality that I talked about. So some people like to watch a TV show. Some people like to read a book. Some people like to do a hobby like crocheting, for example. So so people's individual preferences need to be taken into account. But the basic idea is that we need to start by giving ourselves enough time to wind down. And that's something that a lot of people don't do nowadays is, kind of, we try to just go right up until it's time to go to bed, turn off the lights, and then we just lie there wondering why our mind is racing. So it's giving ourselves that opportunity and then filling that time before bed with things that relax us and that we enjoy.
Yeah, and I know there are resources that tell you should try to minimize being on like your phone or like a device or like a screen right before you go to bed. And I know you mentioned that sometimes people have hobbies like watching a TV show or something. Do you still recommend being on a device even if that person finds that watching a TV show is how they like to unwind before bed?
Well, it's interesting there. So historically, the big advice has been to just avoid all screens for that hour before bed or so. And there's been some debate over that, even in the sleep expert community, to where some of these things that we've been afraid of might not be so bad for us. So, for example, with screens or with devices, one of the big things that we have been worried about is blue light. So they put out this light that kind of is similar to sunlight, and it might trick your body into not producing melatonin until later, which could make it harder to fall asleep and affect the quality of your sleep. So that's the historic way of thinking. And more recent research has led some people to say, you know what, it's not actually as bad as we've been saying it is. So it doesn't affect us that much. Yes, the best practice is probably not to expose ourselves to that light. But if there is a show on TV that you enjoy and, it kind of helps you to unwind and relax, then, it might actually be okay. So there's kind of these debates going on, and I try to stay up on the data just so I know exactly what is the right thing. And so I think that, my way of thinking now is that, if there's a TV show that you enjoy and it's not stimulating you, it's not getting you stressed out, then I think that's an okay thing to do for some of that time leading up to bed.
Yeah, and I do know that sometimes, like I do this too, because like watching a TV show is how I like to unwind before going to bed. But sometimes, like I fall asleep while doing that. And do you think that would be considered like a bad habit?
Well, so yeah, I mean, so what I've learned is that when you fall asleep with the TV on, sometimes even though the sound is, you're asleep, sometimes the sound can be sort of disruptive in the background. So it might keep you from getting into those deeper stages of sleep because you're subconsciously still hearing the sounds from it. And also the light exposure is still happening while you're asleep and it can still go through your eyelids. So it's probably not the best way to do things. It'd probably be better if you could, kind of consciously turn off the TV before you go to sleep, if possible.
Yeah, I feel like I've got a really interesting situation here because I've been doing that for a while now, and I would just fall asleep while sort of watching whatever I'm watching. And then I have this thing now where I need that sound kind of in the background. Like I'd play Netflix and that's how I get to sleep now. Like I need that sound. What do you think that kind of indicates?
Well, I think it may have just become a source of comfort for you. Maybe the sound is just kind of comforting. So I would say, going back to the atomic habits thing, maybe taking a look at replacing the sound of the TV with something else. So maybe, they have sleep stories that you can listen to or kind of calming sounds or something like that. And you can set a sleep timer so they turn off automatically after a certain amount of time. So maybe if you were able to replace the TV noise with that, it could kind of fulfill the same need, but be a little bit less maybe disruptive while you're sleeping.
Yeah. And what would you say are some of like the other challenges people might face when they're trying to set up these like better habits for themselves?
Yeah, I would say one of the things that I see a lot, and it's actually gained a name over the last few years, is called revenge bedtime procrastination. And so this is basically something where people, they go through their days. They don't have a lot of me time during the day. So, you're busy working, you're caring for families, you're doing this and that, or you just have a lot of stress. And so by the time that you get to when it's bedtime, you kind of try to take revenge on the day and you say, okay, well, I didn't get enough me time during the day, so I'm going to get it now. So you end up just kind of watching a show until 2 a.m. or something. And then you don't get enough sleep. You wake up, you're tired, and you do it all over again the next night. And it's this kind of cycle. So that's sort of a self-imposed thing that I see a lot, where we try to stay up later to try to reclaim some me time, and it leads to not getting enough sleep.
Yeah. And do you think that there are some like myths about sleep? Like we mentioned, like naps and like how there's sort of stigma around that. But do you think there are any other like misconceptions or myths surrounding sleep or sleep habits?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of myths. One that comes to mind is that let's see, I'm trying to think. So one that I know of is that alcohol helps you sleep better. So a lot of people will say, "Oh, I'm just going to have a drink or two. It helps to put me to sleep, and then I sleep well." And so studies have shown over and over again that alcohol is terrible for sleep quality. So even just one or two drinks it can help you to fall asleep. So it can make you drowsy, but then in the middle of the night, it kind of affects your quality of sleep. You might wake up a lot during the night, or wake up in the middle of the night and feel kind of a burst of adrenaline. So that's just one, is that people might think that it helps their sleep when in reality it's jeopardizing their sleep quality.
Yeah.
Another one I hear often is people, they try to catch up on sleep on the weekends. So we kind of go during the week, and then on the weekends we try to like sleep in extra long to catch up, and we can't really catch up on that sleep. It doesn't work that way. So if possible, the best thing to do is just to be as consistent as possible throughout the week, so that we don't have to try to catch up unsuccessfully over the weekends.
Interesting. So does that mean we kind of need to have like designated hours or that we sleep and make that consistent?
That is one of the best practices for sleep. So with our circadian rhythm, our internal clock, it pays attention to these different kind of cues that we give it. So it wants to know, when should I go to sleep? When should I wake up in the morning? And so if we're sort of all over the place with that, then it gets confused. And we actually can deal with something that's called social jet lag. So this is a term where, if you're waking up very early on the weekdays and you wake up late on the weekends, then your body doesn't know the appropriate times to be alert or be drowsy or anything. And so you tend to not feel as well during the day. Your sleep is not as good. So we have all these different consequences. So the more that we can, the more we can be consistent, then our body just knows the plan. It knows, okay, so tonight at 10 p.m. is when we go to sleep. Tomorrow at 6 a.m. is when we wake up. And it doesn't have to do any guesswork. It doesn't have to, try to compensate for any variations in that. So consistency is always good when it comes to sleep.
Yeah, and before we were talking about habit stacking, do you think we can use that when we're going to, try and set up a consistent time we go to sleep?
Yeah. And one example is, so sometimes I'll kind of advise people to give themselves those cues at night. So we want to tell the body it's dark and it's getting ready, it's getting close to time to sleep. And so what we can do is sort of, first we have we can structure it so that we have our sleep, our hygiene. So I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to wash my face or whatever. And so that right there is sort of a cue that this is what's happening at this time. And then we can perhaps have the lights automatically dim, or we can just dim the lights. And so that tells our body, okay, it's dark, it's time to produce melatonin, we're getting closer to sleep time. So when we can start to just kind of stack those things together, or even make those environmental changes, then it just gives the body the right signals that it needs to know that sleep is getting close.
Yeah. And are there any other signals you would say that your body is used to or would best like recognize sleep?
Yeah, so one of the other big ones is temperature. So so our body naturally cools down as we're approaching the nighttime and during the night. And if your sleep environment is too warm, then our body doesn't get that signal. Or if we're wearing these, pajamas that are really thick and keep us too warm, then we're not getting that cool down signal. So some of the things we can do for that are to, use the thermostat and turn the temperature down in the bedroom. And just, so that we walk into the bedroom, it's cooler in there. Our body automatically senses that. Or another thing you can do is take a shower or a bath, maybe 60 to 90 minutes before you go to sleep. And so that actually warms up your body. And then after that, as your body's cooling down, and that cool down kind of coincides with the natural cool down that happens before sleep. So we can give our bodies little signals and kind of reinforce what the timing is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's like sounding like you can really mold sleep to really suit you. And it's like a very malleable kind of concept, I guess.
Yeah, it is. And so going back to what I was talking about the sleep detective part, where it's kind of looking at the person's life and looking at, what's your light exposure at night and what's the temperature in your sleep environment. And so we can start to look at all these things and then figure out, okay, here's what we need to change to get some better sleep.
Yeah. And with clients and stuff, what's like the process like? So someone comes to you, they're having trouble sleeping. Is it a series of different consultations? Is it like trial and error? What does it look like to kind of get them to that optimal sleep or peak productivity, I guess?
Sure. So usually the first step is just getting a look at where they're at right now. So I want this snapshot of what does their sleep environment look like? What do their sleep routines look like? What does the stress in their life look like? So I want to know all these things that could potentially affect their sleep. So I give them an intake form just so I can take a look at all those different variables. I have them track their sleep for a week just so I can see their sleep patterns that they're currently having. So once I have all that, then it kind of gives me an idea of here are some things that we can start to address. Here are the most impactful things. So for each of our sessions together, we'll work on a couple of things. So today we're going to work on, maybe sleep-related anxiety, or we're going to work on, let's adjust your sleep schedule to optimize it for you. So we kind of, work on things week by week until we've removed the roadblocks and we've optimized certain things. And usually once we can, make those adjustments, then we start to see that better sleep. We start to see that they are getting higher quality sleep, longer sleep, and that if there's any kind of stress around sleep, that we work to let go of that.
Yeah, super interesting. Well, I'd love to dive into more strategies like we have been talking about and like you just mentioned, but more from like your perspective. So this is our little practices debrief section here. So I'd love to ask if there's a practice that you use personally to help improve your sleep productivity.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it kind of fits in with what we talked about the wind down routine, about the
Yeah.
kind of structuring your evenings. So for myself, that's one thing that when I used to have sleep issues, I think that's something that I didn't do a very good job of. And so over the years, I've kind of worked to figure out what does my wind down routine look like, and how can that help me? So I'd say that's one of the most important things that I focus on.
Yeah, and I guess as a sleep expert, you probably are very well versed in like a lot of different strategies. But do you find that you personally struggle to implement some strategies or stick to like good habits?
I don't, and I
Oh,
used to. I don't, but now I think that I've practiced this for so many years that it has just become sort of a natural routine. So going back to kind of setting boundaries for yourself and saying, okay, at this time, this is when I start to wind down, and so I sort of have established that boundary, and I just when it gets to be that time, I just shut down the electronics. I kind of dim the lights. I go and listen to an audiobook is kind of one of the final things I do. So I just have that routine in place, and it's easy now. It's become something I look forward to, which I think is important. That it's not just we don't have to. It doesn't have to feel like work to wind down, but ideally, it feels like something that you enjoy, something that relaxes you, and that kind of is a natural transition into sleep.
Yeah. And with your like wind down sort of routine, what are like one or two or even three like top things about that, like your favorite parts about it?
I would say, for one thing, it's just there's a source of kind of comfort in it, where it's just, I worked hard today, and now I get to just relax. And so just telling myself that and letting myself relax is kind of rewarding in itself. Um, I really enjoy the final part of it, that the audiobook. Like, I never listened to audiobook until a few years ago. But it's become something I enjoy. So I just put it on for 25 minutes or so, put on the sleep timer so it turns off automatically, and just listen to just a fiction story that I can kind of get lost in and enjoy. So I think, those are a couple of things that it's become something I look forward to each night.
Yeah. And how long does your wind down routine take?
I mean, all in all, it probably takes about an hour and a half. But within that includes things like, brushing my teeth and washing my face, and the audiobook. And so it's not really involved. It's just sort of a natural. I might even watch TV for a little bit earlier on in that period for a little bit, and then kind of transition over. So I'd say probably about an hour and a half.
Yeah. So you wouldn't say it's like rigid or it's like do this, then this, then this.
No, no. And I actually see some people who they get into a little bit of a trouble because they're too rigid with it. So they do this and this, and if they don't have time for one of those things, then it causes friction, causes stress, and then their night's ruined. So I like to maintain some flexibility, and I even like to maintain flexibility where, every now and then there's a night where I'm not able to do this. So maybe it's we stay out a little bit later, or the kids are having trouble falling asleep, or something. And so I just have to be flexible and say, okay, we just have to adjust and go with the flow. And so I think that kind of, if we're too rigid, sometimes that can cause issues a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it can become pretty stressful, especially if that's supposed to be like a routine that's supposed to relax you. It can become very stressful to feel like you have to do this and then things in a certain order
Exactly.
when you might not feel like it.
Exactly. Do you have a routine that you like to follow?
Oh, definitely not. I'm trying to get better at it. I'm very complacent when it comes to my like wind down routine. It's normally just get straight on Netflix and fall asleep while watching it. But yeah, it's something I definitely have to get better at.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, it's a good start. At least you're doing something that you enjoy. That's a good start.
Yeah.
Um, and I like to tell people that it's sort of fun to experiment and find out what works for you. So you can kind of find out what fulfills you, what do you look forward to, what calms you down, and so it's some experimentation that's actually sort of fun. And when you eventually find the right combination, it's very rewarding for you.
Yeah, definitely. And how have you found that, this wind down routine or like your sleep patterns have, helped increase your productivity?
Yeah, so it's overall, it was one of the keys to getting over my sleep issues several years ago, was gradually finding this routine that kind of just calmed me, relaxed me before bed. So when that happens, my sleep quality tends to be better. I tend to have fewer I used to have a lot of like problem solving dreams during the night. So I'd kind of work up until bedtime, and then have these problem solving dreams or these racing thoughts. And so obviously that did not do any favors for my sleep quality. So now that I have this routine in place, I'm doing the right things, I have more restful sleep. And when I have more restful sleep, then I wake up, ready to exercise the next morning. And, I can tackle those work projects with kind of more energy, more focus. And so yeah, overall, I feel like the quality of my work in the daytime has gotten better. My physical activity and exercise has gotten better, and just my mood is better. So all in all, it's been a huge, just upgrade to my life, I think.
Yeah, well, that sounds really successful. And I feel like that's something I would aspire to one day achieve when I can stop falling asleep while watching Netflix.
You can
But
do it.
yeah, well, yeah, definitely can do it. I guess it's just about persistence and actually sticking to things so you can form those habits, right?
Exactly, exactly. And it takes time for some people, and a little bit of trial and error and some false starts. But yeah, I mean, just the more consistently you do it, it gets easier over time, and And then all of a sudden it's just who you are and what you do.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing, a bit of a personal insight into your sleep habits and how you maximize your productivity. This now brings us to our open mic section for today, which is our last bit for today. So I would love for you to, have a chance to talk about anything that you would like to. So the floor is yours.
Sure. So I am actually, I guess one interesting thing is I'm actually heading out to Melbourne in just a few weeks. So I've never been to Australia, but it's one of the places where I've always wanted to visit. So I'm very excited to go out there with the family and just see this great place that I've always heard about. I think that, so one of the funny things is that I always hear about the snakes and the spiders. So I'm interested to see if I, see anything like that as I'm wandering around, and people assure me that they're not as prevalent as they're made out to be. But I feel like I'm going to be just looking around cautiously just to see what's out there. But overall, I'm really looking forward to I hear that the food is amazing there. The atmosphere is great. Obviously, I'm looking forward to seeing a kangaroo at some point, hopefully. And it should be a trip that I think it's going to be kind of a big life experience for myself and my family. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, on the topic of snakes and spiders, as the fellow Melburnian, I can not guarantee you. I'd say there's like a 97% chance you are not going to see a snake if you're in like the city, if you're in like Melbourne CBD. Spiders, well, I had an encounter with one last week in my bedroom. It was quite big and they just pop up randomly. You don't see them that much, if I'm being honest. It really depends where you are. I see one like every few months, but there's like little ones that just crawl around. I guess I'm used to it. I'm not sure if you've heard of like huntsmans.
Those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I personally have only ever seen like 2 in my life. And that's in like the outdoors. Are you guys going to be staying in like the city mostly?
It's outside of the city. I'd like to figure out exactly where I'm going to be and see where that is in relationship to you guys. But I know that their house is a little bit out, like they definitely have some land around them. So it's not right in the city. And I feel like they said they did see a huntsman like a few weeks ago.
Oh,
So
okay. Is this like the regional areas or like suburbs?
I'm going to say suburbs, but I'm not
Okay.
entirely sure. But I'd love to just to figure out exactly where I'm going to be at and see how close that is to your studio.
Yeah, well, we're in a place called the Docklands, which is like 10 minutes from like the heart of Melbourne City. But yeah, everything leads right into the city. Like we're kind of in the middle-ish of everything. So all the suburbs just surround us. But yeah, highly recommend you have a look through like the suburbs and like the cities where people spend most of their time if they're looking for things to do.
Okay. Do you have any just tourist landmarks or something that we absolutely should try to see?
Oh, it's so weird because I have not been a tourist in my own city for a very long time. There's Flinders Street Station, which is our most famous station. Definitely have to not only get a train into there, but just look at like the building. It's super old and historic. It's like the one with like all the clocks and stuff. We've got the Yarra. So having dinner like by the South Bank. So it's by the water, which is really nice. There's this like restaurant bar, which I love, called Arbory Afloat. So it's like a floating restaurant and bar. It's very nice. And you're coming in the summer as well. So perfect time to do things like outdoorsy.
Yeah, I'm excited. It just snowed here, so it's
Oh,
nice to get away from that snow for a little while.
yeah. Well, Melbourne weather's very unpredictable. You'll find that it might be raining one day and then the next day it's like 30 degrees. I think that's like 90 something degrees Fahrenheit. How much is that for you? Like oh, would you roughly know?
Celsius is something the conversion is something I'm not well versed in.
Yeah. Is 90 something really hot?
90 is pretty hot, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
so
So Yeah,
Yeah.
no, go on.
Oh, generally, yeah. So anything above 90 we consider pretty hot here.
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, Melbourne summer should be like high 80s, low 90s, I think.
That sounds
I'm not too
perfect.
sure. Yeah, well, I did a semester exchange at Penn State, and I was there when it started. It was like the end of summer, and then it got really cold, and then it started snowing. So I kind of have like a rough idea of Fahrenheit,
hmm
but don't quote me.
Okay. Does it ever snow there?
No,
No.
not like where people would normally live. You can go up to like the mountains and stuff, but you're not going to see snow at this time of the year, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sad about that at all. Like
Yeah, it'd be
looking
a good
forward to the
change.
sun. Yeah, sun. And how are you close to water? Do you have
Oh, yeah.
you are okay.
Yeah, so a lot of the suburbs are like lined up against like a little, not a coast, but like a lot of like beaches. Like we've got massive series of beaches. A famous beach is St Kilda Beach. Um, I wouldn't say it's like the most iconic spot for like swimming, but it's like definitely great. It's got like a boardwalk, lots of restaurants. It gets pretty busy there. Some people like to like rollerblade and stuff around. It's very cool. But I got endless recommendations, but that's a
Okay.
good one.
Okay. I'm taking notes.
I can see that. Well, thank you for sharing that with us. I hope you have a lovely time when you come
Thank
to
you.
Melbourne. How long are you here for?
3 weeks almost.
Yeah.
So
Well,
enough time to explore and see a lot of the sites. And I feel like we're going to take a little 3-day trip down to another area sort of site. I can't remember exactly where, but yeah, otherwise we'll just be around the Melbourne area.
yeah, lots of great road trips you can do, like around Victoria. But yeah, it'll be really good. 3 weeks is like a perfect amount of time.
Yeah, I think so too. Thanks.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Seth. I had a really great time chatting with you and learning about your little Australian adventure. So, yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, no worries. So, for anyone wanting to find out a bit more about you, Seth, where can they go?
So the easiest place would be to go to our website, which is sleepably.com. So it's just sleepably.com.
Perfect. Well, if you missed that, we've also got Seth's details in the description below. But to everyone listening, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you guys next time. You have been listening to Work in Progress, the Personal Productivity Science Insights podcast produced by the Life Management Science Labs. Listen to episodes from LMSL's 10 Life Management Perspectives on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or other podcasting apps on your smartphone. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it and us grow to bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website, pp.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Joanna. Thanks for tuning in.